Hello everyone. This week I'm bringing you a professional with 25 years of experience in the automotive and fine automotive sales industry. Mr. Bruce Compton has quite extensive experience going back in 1988 when he started working for Audi Dovercourt, paving his way onto becoming a Ferrari sales specialist at Maranello and later working for Lamborghini and Rolls-Royce London. In 2021, he changed his trajectory and co-founded Recharge Rescue, offering 24/7 roadside support to electrical vehicle drivers via a convenient and inexpensive insurance model. This interview dives into the journey of Mr. Compton from when he joined Audi in 1988 and how he harnessed the necessary skills to organically aid into sales growth and client attraction/retention in HR Owen Ferrari, Lamborghini, and Rolls-Royce London, plus how he developed his idea of becoming a full-time entrepreneur in an endeavor quite different, I would say, from what his career topic was. At this point, I would also like to sincerely thank Mr. Compton for allocating his very valuable time to talk to me, reflect upon his journey, and hopefully inspire you guys and inspire you in an educational manner. Through his skill set, you will understand what it takes to not just sell a car, take it from point A to point B, and then job is done. Sales is an art, and it should be treated like an art. And you will see all of this in the interview.
There's just so much passion.
You're taking the experience of the car, extrapolating it into the experience of the boutique when people come in. So everything is around what the car is. That's what I see.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, look, when you come into the showroom, if we know you, the first thing we're going to do, as long as it's after 12 o'clock, is ask you if you want a glass of rosé champagne, and you sit in, and we're turning it into a club again. You know, let's chat about your business, or what's going on in the news today, or it is about that relationship. And you're quite right, that is the atmosphere you're creating.
I'd like to welcome Mr. Bruce Compton. Mr. Compton has 25 years of sales experience with some of the finest automotive brands in the world. And he's a co-founder of Recharge Rescue, a company aiming to provide a 24/7 roadside assistance for EV vehicles, which, if I may add a comment as well, is much needed, especially in countries with underperforming charging systems, which happens a lot in Europe. So I think your initiative is extremely useful.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you for allocating your valuable time to talk to me, enlighten me about your sales experience and your initiatives and endeavors. It really means a lot to a student like me and the students who will see this interview.
It's a pleasure.
So I would like to take you back 25 years ago to 1988.
Yeah.
And I want you to give me an idea of how the realm of sales was back then. How was your first contact with the industry?
Okay, so just very briefly, when I was at school, I was really interested in photography. And my very first job was working for a photographic lab in Soho in central London. And I was there from a very young age. I left school at a young age, which was quite conventional then. And I was there for about 3 years. And then I got a job as an assistant to a photographer, which was the kind of natural course that you took if you wanted to become a photographer. And unfortunately, that photographer was rather mean. He wasn't a very pleasant chap. And within about a year, he'd kind of cured my interest and love for photography to a degree anyway. So I was looking at other things to do. And I'd always been very passionate about cars, more than sales to start with. And I come from a family with a kind of motoring background. My father was involved in the motor trade, and my grandfather. So that was a natural place for me to look. And my first job was a weekend job selling secondhand cars in Kingston, which is in Surrey in South London. And in answer to your question, it was very different to today in that as you would expect. Obviously, no computers. Everything was done on a phone and with a piece of paper and a paper record of customers and documentation. But I think what was equally different was the fact that it was a very physical process. If someone wanted to buy a car, they had to come and look at it. They couldn't do anything online. They had to visit you. They had to meet you. And part of that process was not only did they have to like the car, but they had to get on with you. If they didn't get on with you, they wouldn't spend their money with you. So I think that in a very brief summary is the key difference between 1988 and today in terms of that interaction in a sales process between, the buyer and the seller.
Yeah, I would say it doesn't really happen anymore, especially with commercialized vehicles when they're getting sold by thousands.
Yeah.
That emotional connection and investment from the customer and vice versa from the seller doesn't really happen. It only happens in the fine car sales.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So this paved the way basically from the get-go for you to try and establish that connection and create a frame with yourself within yourself.
100%. So my interest was always in exotic and expensive and fine cars and motor racing and all this sort of stuff. So from the beginning, I was always wanting to find a route into that marketplace. And I did that. I mean, there's always a degree of luck in these opportunities opening up. I think what I've found in the luxury industry, whether it be cars or watches or anything else, is that personality is really key, and you've got to meet the right people and get on with them. So all of a sudden, although your digital profile is obviously very important these days, being able to meet that person who's going to open that door, that gateway for you, and be able to go out for lunch with them or whatever, meet them for a coffee, whatever it is, and get on, is really critical. So so yeah, you're right. The gateway for me from that little secondhand car dealer was I went into an Audi dealership in St John's Wood, which is in North London, quite an expensive part of North London. And that appealed to me, not just because I thought Audis were nice cars, but because I knew that in that part of London, I would be able to meet some much more likely to meet wealthy, influential customers that I might, that might be useful contacts for me, essentially.
Did you have in your mind, that's a question you didn't put in, but I cannot help but ask it. Did you have in your mind the element of authentically approaching these transactions? Because at the end of the day, what you want is money. What they want is the product. But it doesn't have to be called like that.
No.
Were you thinking about, okay, I want to go up to these clients, but I also want to be as authentic as possible, establish good connections, transparent ones?
I think it's a really good question because I think if you're not authentic, people particularly, this is a generalization. There are plenty of wealthy people who don't have these qualities, but there are lots of people who are wealthy because they have understood the game of life and they've got to a good position through that knowledge. And they can see someone who is not genuine and who is not authentic very quickly. They see through that. So I think it's a really great question, and authenticity and genuinely, attempting to get on with people, understand people, and making that relationship is really important.
I want to see also how that developed in the interval from Autodrome to then Hexagon, BMW. Can you take me through that transition?
Yeah, absolutely. So Autodrome was probably one of my favorite jobs. Because when I got there, I was, I think, 21 or 22. I'd done that journey I've already described, and Autodrome was probably one of the biggest classic car dealerships in London at the time. It was based in an old 1930s bus warehouse, huge, on the Caledonian Road, which they converted into a classic car place full of classic cars. And they had everything from Triumph TR4s and Porsche 356s up to Aston Martin DB5s. I mean, at one point underneath my office, there was a Lamborghini Miura, there was an Aston Martin DB5, there was a Ferrari Testarossa, there was a Ferrari 250 GTE. All of these cars were just parked in front of the office. I mean, the value now would be just mind-blowing. And at the time, people could come in and we'd take them up for a test drive up onto the Westway on the A40.
No, this would never happen nowadays.
No
No chance.
and genuinely,
no.
yeah, this is what we used to do. And one of the reasons I love the job is it was commission only. So there was no basic salary. If you wanted to go and sell there, you had to sell. And if you didn't sell, they didn't pay you anything. And I kind of like that. I was young enough to really appreciate the kind of the slight edginess of that. And it made you really motivated when you went in. Um, but one of the upsides of this was if you did have a good week, not only did they pay you a commission, but they let you take one of the cars home. So I was the only 22-year-old going home in a DB6 Vantage, you know, and going to a party and all this stuff. So clearly at the time I was very, very lucky. And I did realize that even at the time.
I think
um,
I can imagine the dynamic of the job, especially for a 22-year-old.
it was
The only
immense.
word I can describe it is with crazy. It's crazy.
It was crazy. And so again, you know, the sort of customers that came in there, one of the Rothschild family, one of the younger members of the Rothschild family was a regular in there. I used to deal with him a lot. I got invited to his house in Oxford on a couple of occasions. You know, really, really interesting people. I mean, you know, you could name drop all day long, but the point is, you're in that environment and you feel lucky because all you've got to do, you've got a great product. You've just got to make
Mhm.
sure you're talking to the right people, and then when they start to buy from you, give them the confidence and the desire to want to keep coming back to you, because there's lots of other people selling nice stuff. You know, why do they have to come back to you? It's because hopefully you've built that rapport and relationship with them, and they want to keep coming back.
Would you say, could we say basically that it's bragging rights? So some people want to be proud of their car guy or car girl. My car guy that can source anything and everything I ask for
Yeah,
in a short amount of time.
I think it's a really good point. I think there's plenty of people. If you imagine, you know, if you put yourself in the shoes of somebody with that level of wealth, they want the easiest route, and not just the easiest route, as you say, they want to be proud of that relationship. They want
Hmm.
it to be somebody. I mean, my brother is in the fine watch industry, and I know he has very similar relationships, which he's had for a very long time with people, and they just want to say, "Oh yeah, Danny, yeah, phone Danny up, he'll help," and they'll share that information with their contacts and friends as well. So yes, it's true.
So take me to Cheval Place in 1995 and Ferrari, because I think it would have been a dream of yours at that point.
It was. I mean, like that really was. As much as the Autodrome was my favorite job, when I first walked through the door at Cheval Place, I couldn't believe I was going to work there. I just thought I was having a day out. You know, it was. And the difference then was, whereas now the corporate identity is very, very controlled by the factory. Back then, in the mid 90s, you could have a Ferrari franchise in the same building as Maserati, as TVR, as Lotus, which is what we had there. And as a result, it felt like a club. You know, we'd have again a big variety of customers coming in, but yeah, I mean, for me, it was thrilling, and what was fantastic is I was all of a sudden dealing with the Ferrari factory in Maranello. Um, so I was getting into ordering vehicles and responsibility on that level. And so yeah, it was tremendous fun and opened up a lot of insights into the industry, which I didn't have until then.
Mhm. And where did you focus basically to develop the sales interface? Because you became a subsequently a Ferrari specialist for Maranello. So was a multi-level role. How did you focus to do that?
Um, Look, I mean, I'm not going to blow my own trumpet unnecessarily here. The part of um, what facilitates this process initially
Mhm.
is the quality of the garage and the name. So if you think about HR Owen, if you think about Maranello, those brands have built up over, you know, decades to give people confidence. Is a bit like if you want to buy a lovely ring and you go to Mappin and Webb, or you want to buy a watch from Rolex. So the guys who build these businesses have done the first bit of work for you. Your job then is making sure that when those people walk through the door, they're getting a top flight experience and you're not missing any opportunities. So it's, I don't want to make it sound easier than it is, but it is
Mhm.
relatively straightforward. The other aspect of this with motor cars is the part exchange. A lot of people are going to come to you with another vehicle. They've probably got an inflated idea of what it's worth. So you've then got to manage that expectation and give them real examples of what the vehicle's genuinely worth, and come to a compromise somewhere so that you can do a deal. So that's probably a a key part of that interface, and making those sales work and generating more and more of them.
Yeah, basically being a realist with everyone, creating within them realistic expectations of their product or what they want to buy for that matter. So, how did you transfer that growth to Lamborghini then? Because that's another role where you increased the sales interface.
Yeah, that was interesting, because Lamborghini at the time, it was just before Audi had bought Lamborghini. And what was interesting was they were doing a very small volume of vehicle sales, partly because the factory couldn't supply enough vehicles, but partly because the vehicles were highly impractical. So you had the Diablo was the last before Audi took over. And although it was a really exciting car, you know, just it was too much of a pain in the backside for most people to deal with it, you know. So when I went in there, Audi had just taken over. They just about to launch the Gallardo, and they didn't really know how to approach it. And what I was able to take from Ferrari was the most important thing when you've got a really desirable new product like this is to build the waiting list. And again, it might sound straightforward, but if you can build an order bank, so you're talking to all your old contacts at Ferrari and you're saying, look, we know you're a Ferrari guy, but you want to see this new Lamborghini, is stunning, and you can drive it everywhere, and you know your partner can drive it. It's easy to drive, etc. And by building the order bank, what you do is you create this. You create a desire, because if you go into a showroom and someone says, "Oh yeah, here's a Gallardo, you can take it away," however nice it is, you're sort of you're not compelled to go into it. Whereas if someone says, "Here's a Gallardo, you can have one in 18 months' time," it creates a more desire. So although it sounds like you're manufacturing that, you're not. It's a genuine demand which you're facilitating and building up an order bank, and that was basically the key to going from 10 sales a year to 110 sales a year from that little showroom in South Kensington in the space of a few years. So yeah, that was it. And the other key thing to that is motor shows. Geneva particularly, you want to make sure every year you're inviting your key clients and your key prospects there. They love the experience, and they can see new products, and they're putting down deposits on new products. So you're building up an order bank for a car that isn't coming out for 3 years.
Plus, we need to consider the fact that Lamborghini is producing a single model. It has had like 5 to 6 halo cars. So at the time you had the Murcielago and Gallardo. So you have like 2 cars you have to work with. That's it.
Yeah.
So they have to appeal at an audience, and you have to increase the sales interface out of 2 models.
Yes, that's very true. I think again, a lot of that is down to creating, or rather making people understand that the desirability of the car is such that even if it wasn't exactly the model they were looking for, they can use that car for maybe 2 or 3 years. And again, I hate to come back to finance, but it does play a part. Even though it's an emotional product, it is about funding and finance for these guys who are buying these cars, and women. It's if they know they can buy that car and use it for 2 years, and it's only going to depreciate by 20 grand rather than 80 grand, which might happen if you buy an Aston Martin, that is another compelling part of the story. So it sounds a bit boring to turn it into accountancy terms, but that does play a part.
No, these are the logistics, and they are very important, especially for a new aspiring salesman or sales person, for that matter, who wants to get into the industry. You need to know these details; they're vital.
Yes.
So, how different was the experience when you transitioned to Rolls-Royce?
So Rolls-Royce, I love the product. I mean, when I went to Rolls-Royce, the Phantom had been out for a while and they just launched the Ghost, but the Phantom I just think is stunning, and the two-door Phantom in particular is just such a crazy car. You know, it just ticks so many boxes. So the transition there is that you're dealing with a very different type of client. You're going from self-made entrepreneurs, generally, quite a few bankers, but a lot of self-made entrepreneurs at Lamborghini. You're in Rolls-Royce, you're going into much more of a corporate world. You're going into a lot of businesses that want Rolls-Royces. You're going into a lot of, I remember the Candy brothers used to buy a lot of Rolls-Royces there because they would like driving their clients and their customers around in these vehicles from different properties that they're developing. So you've got that level, and then you have got private individuals as well who just want to be in a Rolls-Royce. So it had a different air in terms of the interface with the clients and how you were developing sales. Again, they were coming through the door, but it was not so much. It was an emotional purchase to a degree, but it's about making it as simple and easy as possible. So we had a driver there, for example, who'd been there for a very long time. He knew the cars very well indeed, and if you had a client phone up who lived in St Albans, let's just say he's got a house, their big house up there, you'd send the driver up there with the car initially. The customer would then be able to see it in on their drive, and it's just making it a luxury experience, because at the end of the day, Rolls-Royce is probably one of the top 5 luxury brands in the world. So it's just pushing those buttons and making sure you're presenting in that way to people.
Basically, you're taking the experience of the car, extrapolating it into the experience of the boutique when people come in. So everything is around what the car is. That's what I see.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, it's true. I mean, look, when you come into the showroom, if we know you, the first thing we're going to do, as long as it's after 12 o'clock, is ask if you want a glass of rosé champagne, and you sit in, and we're turning it into a club again. Let's chat about your business, or what's going on in the news today, or it is about that relationship. And you're quite right, that is the atmosphere you're creating. And then the car, we all know the car is incredible. The car is superb. If you want it in white with red leather seats, okay, let's make that happen. So you're right, it is just that. It's a lovely way to do business. Of course, it's not always sunny. When things
No.
go wrong, people get very, very upset at that level of the market, and you can deal with a lot of very, quite serious aggravation. So there's a lot of pressure not to make mistakes. But yes, you're right. The flip side is there are some really, positive edges to dealing at that level.
How would you deal with someone who is aggravated, a customer who is dissatisfied with the experience?
You've just got to try and understand what caused the problem, and then what you can possibly do to try and soothe it. It's about listening. Like a lot of things in sales, it's about listening more than talking, really. And letting people get things off their chest, and then seeing what you can do to deal with it. Sometimes there will be situations that are irreparable, because some people are, once they've made up their mind that they're no longer happy or convinced that you're suitable to deal with them, it doesn't matter what you do or say, they'll go elsewhere. But there are some that you can save, and certainly there are people I can remember that got to that point almost, and then we were able to bring them back and keep them on board as a customer.
So after 25 years, there was a glimpse of entrepreneurship within you that propelled you to then AFF Holdings, and subsequently to Recharge Your Rescue.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about that phase and how the
Yeah.
idea came up of on-road support?
Absolutely. So this again ties, as you'd expect, directly into what I've been doing up until Rolls-Royce. While I was at Lamborghini, I met a customer, very young guy in his early 20s, who came into me with a Porsche, who wanted to buy a Gallardo when they first came out, who was in insurance, and he owned an insurance brokerage. Long story short, I used to refer customers to him, and they would insure their cars through his business. Some of them, obviously not all of them. And then while I was at Rolls-Royce, he phoned me up and he said, "Listen, I'm about to buy a business which is involved in mobile fuel drains. So in other words, when people misfuel their vehicle, I'm buying this business which has a variety of vans that go and deal with this problem roadside." He said, "And I think it could be a really good service to offer insurance companies. So in other words, we could scale it up." And to me, I'd been in luxury cars for a long time. I'd loved it, but I think as I've explained to you, I think with Autodrome and Ferrari in the 90s, I think I felt like I'd experienced the best I could get out of that. And to me, although it was a bit more grown up, I thought the opportunity of going into a real business, if you like, dealing with real day-to-day problems that everybody experiences, was interesting. And so I did. I made the leap, and it's been a massive learning curve in the first few years, particularly because I went from just focusing all of my attention on sales to broadening it across, everything that a business needs to be run properly. And yeah, so that was the first step, AFF Holdings. And we've been doing that quite successfully. We managed to gain some quite key clients. The AA and the RAC are the two biggest ones since 2012. And about 3 years ago, we were sitting around looking at it thinking, well, by 2030, nobody can buy a petrol or a diesel car. What are we going to do with ourselves? And we could see the electric vehicle market was going to be a huge growth market. So we thought about how we could dual role this network of vans we've got doing mobile fuel drains to be able to do electric vehicle charging as well. And that's key, because if you went out today and you wanted to buy enough electric charging vans to cover the country, you would go out of business very quickly unless you had a very big bank balance, because there just isn't that enough work at the moment. So the idea is the fuel drain business facilitates that sort of transition as the cars change on the road. So yeah, that was how we got to do it. It's now an insured product, Recharge Rescue. So the reason we went down that route is because rather than just being a service provider, we'd like to be the company that provides insurance policies to customers who, when they buy their EV. So you buy an EV and you go, yeah, okay, I want to protect myself. Here's an extra 40 quid a year and I'll protect myself through Recharge Rescue. So that's simplifying it quite a lot. There's quite a lot gone on to get to that point, but yeah, that's it. So not as glamorous or as exciting as selling the cars that I used to be involved in, but hopefully it will be more lucrative. And as I get older, I feel like it kind of suits the stage of life I'm in, to be dealing with this kind of business rather than the slightly more exciting stuff.
I mean, no one can define what's best for you. Only you can do it, Mr. Compton. Absolutely. So, and I believe that, I mean, up to that point, like 2012, you had like vast experience with fine automobile customer care, and I assume you transferred this rationale within AFF and then Recharge Rescue. There's no
100%.
way you didn't.
100%. And what's interesting is that the AFF business and Recharge Rescue, to a slightly lesser degree, both grew after we'd purchased them on the back of developing B2B relationships. And when I look back, although I was dealing with private individuals buying these luxury cars, 90% of them had their own businesses. So in a way, that interface and the experience I had with dealing with people of that nature and from that background, transposed really well to AFF, because what I had to do is I had to go knock on the door of the AA, find out who was not necessarily the CEO, but the proposition director or whatever, whoever the correct person was to be speaking to, and then develop that relationship with them. Because the AA, for example, took 3 years from first speaking to them to turning it into a contract. So you're right, absolutely. That experience I gained when I was younger did serve a purpose, even when I moved into a different industry.
So taking basically 35 years of your experience, your entire experience, squeezing it into advice and virtues you adhere to through these 35 years, how would you advise a young guy or girl who wants to go into fine automobile sales and also has an entrepreneurship twist in your character as well? What would you say to them?
I would say definitely do it, because you will have a wonderful time. I think what I would say, George, is that times are so different. I mean, when I was young, you didn't have to go to university and have a degree to open the door on an interview, whereas I feel like now you kind of do. I don't know if that's true across the luxury industry, though. As I say, I have a brother in the watch industry who comes from a very similar background to mine. He's a little bit, he's 4 years younger than me, but it's very similar. I would just say get on the phone to Burberry if you're into fashion, or Gucci if you're into cars. Get those contact names, get reaching out to these people, because it is about personality and it is about contact. And I think you can overcome any sort of shortfalling you perceive you have in your education or on your CV, can be overcome very quickly if you can get in contact with that first person. LinkedIn is fabulous. I use it all the time. There are other ways to locate these, but even if you just go to places, if you can find where the head office is and doorstep them, go and talk to the receptionist, say, look, I'm really keen, if this is my background. I would just be very proactive about it, but I would certainly recommend it. you know, the other thing to remember is that the financial rewards are potentially really good if you're in these industries, because the profitability in the product is great. If anything, cars are probably at the lower end of the profitability scale, because the manufacturer earns all the profit and the dealers earn a, you know, 5-10%. If you're selling fine jewelry, you know, you're probably working directly for Cartier. So yeah, there's all sorts of interesting angles, and I would certainly say, yeah, go for it.
Maybe it would be, yeah, working directly for the manufacturer would be something that's extremely beneficial, which is something you also did because you directly worked for Ferrari as a specialist. I wouldn't know if that's possible in the same capacity as you did it nowadays. Most likely it wouldn't.
No, I think you're right. I think now they'll have a brand director who would have that interface between the actual physical ordering of the cars and the sales team. I think you're right. I think it's unlikely that it would be able to be done the way I did it then. But you know, there are still, you know, the structures change, but the end goal is still the same as it always was. And everybody's very good these days, I think, at adapting and doing things the way that they need to be done for it to work. So yeah, I'd have every confidence that someone who's really motivated could find a way to make it work.
Can I call you Bruce? I don't think
Of
there
course,
is.
please do. Yeah, yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
think there's reason yet. Bruce, I want to thank you for all the advice you provided. I mean, it's very insightful to be able to maybe move a step forwards, maybe for a young guy like me, because I'm a very diverse character, and I really like sales. I believe sales is everything in life. Everything in life is sales. From the utensils you're gonna go and buy in a shop to taking your girlfriend out to buying a dog for that matter. Everything in life is sales. So I don't believe you just did sales. I believe you did people, I would say. That's what I believe
Yeah.
sales is.
I think you're right, but thank you very much for saying it. And I agree with you that I think, you know, we do live in a very removed atmosphere sometimes, and I still think that as good as and as clever as AI is and Chat IPT or whatever it's called, you know, there's all sorts of very clever digital stuff out there which is only going to get more and more powerful. I totally understand that, but there will always be a space in an organization for somebody who wants to go to the meeting and sit opposite somebody and talk to them about how they're going to promote their business or whatever it is they're selling, software, whatever it is. And I think in a way that role will become more important as automation takes over in other areas of business. So yeah, yeah, I think you're right. It's all about people.
That's very interesting, Scott, that you described. I think that deserves a whole different interview as well.
Yeah, let's do
Um,
it.
but absolutely, I wouldn't mind because in industries they are trying a little bit to remove the element of human interaction. It's a little bit robotized. Decision metrics, that's what we want. That's it. No negotiation tactics needed. They're just persuading the person as per the product. Emotional investment and connection, as far, I mean, this exists in the realm of automotive sales, doesn't really exist.
It's interesting. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are certainly a lot of salespeople who are like that. And you're right. The reality is that when you're sitting in a big headquarters somewhere and you're bashing out the numbers and you've decided you need to sell 10,000, you know, Bentiagos or whatever they're pronounced, I don't know, next year in the UK, you forget that ultimately it does take, you know, Robert Smith or Belinda in the showroom to meet that person, get on with
Mm-hmm.
them, value their part exchange, talk them through the trim, and make them want the car. And that individual process has to happen 10,000 times. And yeah, I still think personally that's very difficult to do without a human. You're quite right. If you're in a Ford, if you're in the world of high volume stuff, then maybe it's different. You know, Kazoo and all these businesses are proving that can be done. You know, without human interaction to a degree. But I think, yeah, when you're talking about the sort of stuff we're talking about luxury, then I'm not so sure.
It's measured by of course the result you bring, but as I saw from your journey, I mean, character will take you far, like
Yeah.
really far, and I think it took you far. So,
I was very
Bruce,
fortunate, but yes, yeah, indeed.
yeah, I think you were fortunate, but I also I don't necessarily believe in luck. I believe luck is where preparation meets opportunity. I think you were prepared. I think you had it within you to be in sales. So, Bruce, I want to wish you all the best with your
Thank
future
you.
endeavors. I can see you're an alive, like actually alive individual. You don't like to settle. You want to reimagine, rediscover yourself, do different
Yes,
things.
that's very true. Well, George, I
So,
think it's been a great interview. You've hosted it very well and asked some interesting questions. Thank you so much for your time. And we're very happy to do another at some point if you think there's a relevant topic that we could talk about.
I mean, absolutely. I'm sure by next year maybe you're gonna launch something else. Maybe I will see
Yeah,
something else.
yeah,
There is no reason for me to not approach you again. I'm a very open person, and these interviews are not just based on me extracting information from you to use it. They are based on human interaction as well. I want to resonate with the individual I'm interviewing because everyone is distinguished and unique. I don't want to treat them as, okay, I got the recording, bye.
yeah, yeah.
Nah,
No,
I don't really like that. As you were authentic, I want to be authentic as well.
I'm sure you will be. I'm sure. No, absolutely. Well, look, thanks again, and
No
let's keep
worries.
in touch, and hopefully we'll have something interesting to talk about again very soon.
Absolutely. So I'll aim to have the interview ready within 2 to 3 weeks. I'll put it on my personal drive, share it using your email. You can assess it, and then we can publish it. Hopefully, inspire some people.
You're a gentleman.
Okay.
Cheers, George.
Thank you. You
Nice
too.
to meet
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks a
Beautiful
lot.
day. Beautiful day.
Thank you very much. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.